Hey guys, this is Patrick Zorica with Premiere Photography. Thank you for stopping by. All right, well, we have some good news from Adobe on that recent upgrade that just introduced. That is the Lightroom Classic CC. If you have it, that's an outstanding software so far. So the new features, even though we call them new, they call them new, they've always existed in Lightroom. It just the interface, the user interface wasn't as friendly as a lot of people may think, so they have not been used. So with the new changes now, they are absolutely relevant. So Lightroom for the past 10 years has been a very limited. You can only do so much with it, and then photographers go back and forth with from Lightroom to Photoshop and some other plugins like Aurora or Luminar, for example, etc. So if you notice in the last, I'll say 3 months, Adobe have been very active. They've been really doing some good updates, and I think they want to be relevant. And then maybe watching from other softwares that they're now paying attention. So let me show you a little bit on those recent updates. And I want to show you how you use them and what's for. But in the meantime, I also want to highlight a little bit what happened in the last, in December we had version 7.1, and that was mainly because of the Adobe Sensei to intelligently apply adjustments based on photos, lights, and exposure. So they introduced the option that is right here, the auto. So if you're looking at this picture right now, which is the raw file, and if you click here, it's gonna kind of adjust it based on your exposure, some of the highlights that's in the raw file. I will say do not underestimate this option. It really is a good one. I originally said, well, artificial intelligence isn't gonna make me happy, but let me tell you, you can go from here. So make no mistake, it's an option that you should be looking at. Let me reset it back. In the meantime, in early February 2018, they introduced version 7.2. In that version, literally, they made the CPU and memory optimization. So the performance of Lightroom became relevant. Again, we're like, wow, it's a lot faster than what it used to be. And a lot of people, I myself included, I was like, wow, I can see that difference. Also, they introduced the creation of collections from folders. That was mainly the highlight that a lot of people liked, how to create collections. Some filters, Photoshop based, and on some edits and etc. But on the latest version, which is 7.3, now this is the highlight. And if you look at the panel, when you go to develop here, they now have moved dehaze, which used to be down. Dehaze now it's part of your basic panel. Excellent move. I use it all the time. I'm usually very light with it, and use it a lot with my landscape. So dehaze, it's now right here, and I think it makes a sense. So keep in mind that Adobe wants you, the reason why everything it's menued the way it is, basically the way they look at it, if you follow their workflow, you should be going from top to bottom, and it makes sense. So now the recent upgrade is the 7.3 version. Now they brought up profiles. So if you look at profile, this is new. This is, again, the profiles existed, but now we do have raw mapping and camera matching. So when you're rendering your photos, normally the camera will have already some profiles. And the reason we take raw, obviously, is we're telling the camera, we're telling the Adobe that we don't want any profile added or adjustment to the picture. That's why you then decide what you want to do, etc., etc. But it is an option that is now available. It used to be, if you click here, Now, it used to be Adobe Standard. Now you have many Adobe colors been introduced, and this is again for raw images. And they also introduced the face recognition. So camera matching profiles, and that usually is your skin tones and contrast in addition to saturation, especially when you're doing landscape. So what did they do? So they've got now your Adobe landscape, for example, your Adobe portrait, and you can tell as I go through it. So that is a big deal. But the most important, the new one, is when you hit browse. There we go. You've got quite a bit. You've got a profile that is called favorite, Adobe Raw. And this is what I was talking about, Adobe Raw profiles. Let's say your favorite. So you drop down this here. By the way, you can view it on grid or large. I don't like it. Or the list, which I also don't like. So my favorite is to work with the grid. Here, so you've got some favorites profile. As you hover with your mouse, you can see that the view now is changing, which is something it didn't before. So as you're looking at this one, you've got the vivid, you've got the Adobe color. So now you can just click on this one, and now you have your profile added to it. Think of it as layers, okay? So even though it's not your Photoshop layers, but the difference between the profile and the presets, your presets, if I close this one here, the presets are going to be what they're going to be. So it is your technical adjustment versus your creative adjustment. So the profile now is giving you your creative adjustment. One of them, if I now minimize this one, you've got the Adobe Raw. Again, you've got all those profiles that you can play with. You've got the camera matching. This is based on your camera. So when you take a picture, if it's not RAW, if it's JPEG, those are the profiles get automatically matched based on your exposure. Now they are on Lightroom. So when you take raw images, you can come down here. If you want to match them with the camera, keep in mind this is camera specific. So Canon and etc. They're all going to be different. My favorite now that I like, you've got also the legacy. All right, here they are. You've got the artistic, very nice. So again, you can just hover, and then you can see the difference. And my favorite is the modern. I think I can use this, and I think I can use them as a starting point. Not necessarily everything, but it gives you ideas and gives you some looks and how you can do it. All right. So that is basically one of the biggest excitement for a long time now that it changes the game, because like I said, you know, your settings are your settings. I'm not a big believer on that, but the truth to be said, a lot of people use them and it's a starting point. Now you can get this as in addition to your settings, where you've a lot more flexibility in playing with your raw images. So I usually just want to circle back here quickly. My flow will come in and open up the shadows, not too much for portraits, make the highlights a little bit, bring them back, and I can do some of the whites obviously. And so if I can come in, if I hold the Alt button and bring it to a point where I can see, now get back a little bit, that's it. And then I do the blacks, the same thing. Hold the Alt button until you see some black coming up, that's enough. And then I can do a little bit contrast, a little bit of maybe take the exposure down here, very little. Dehaze, take it down, clarity, vibrance a little bit, and obviously saturation. So this is what I usually do. In addition to this, I like to go back and forth between auto or daylight and see what it gives. If it's landscape and sunset, usually I go shades and see what it does as well. So in this case, I'm going to go as shot. So the other update is the black and white. Now it's also part of your basic panel. It used to be with the hues and the colors. Now it's right here. So if you click here, that becomes the black and white. And now you can do whatever you want as well. So, but I'm going to continue working on the color aspect of it. So I usually also play with some tone curve in here, which is really outstanding. If I take it down a little bit, look at the brings up some of the highlights and tones. Or I can also go back and kind of see what the difference here does. It's too much, so I can bring it back to normal. Or if you are like me, I usually come back here and go to medium contrast. That does it. If not, I'll just come back to light, linear. But I am going to take it down a notch here. There we go. And I'll also will go down to details. And details, I will always start with masking first. And if I hold down the Alt button and start moving, remember, black conceals, white reveals. So right now, if I go back and forth, I'm telling Lightroom to only sharpen the white. Anything that's white needs to be sharpened. Anything that's in the background, I don't want it to create any noise on it. So there we go. So if I like this one, I'll leave it like this, and then I will come back. And my philosophy is get closer to this. I can zoom in. And radius maybe 1.1 at the most. We'll go details, leave it alone. Luminance here also, I'm going to take it a little bit up. A lot of people will go from maybe 60 here to 20, which usually an ISO 50. You can do 100 as well. And leave everything else the same. So I'm done with this. Go back. And lens correction, that is a given. All right, always go to your profile and correct it and remove any chromatic aberration, and don't do anything vignetting. I'll usually do it with luminar, and I'll talk a little bit about luminar. And close this one. And this is what I used to do. The effect used to be the dehaze. Now we don't have to get down there. Calibration, that's what used to be the forms. Nothing like today, but that's what it used to be. And that is basically some of the highlights of the those profiles. So they're going to be really, really impressive. So if you had any presets pre-installed, they're going to be moved to the what is it? The XMP files. So for the presets. So don't worry about that. They're going to be all matched to the new preset XMP files. All right, the other thing here, if you look at the preset, this is a big deal as well. If you look at the preset, let's say I'm doing creative here, and let's say I want to, what used to be on your presets, if you hover over the presets, you can only see it on the navigation view. Now you can see it on the big view, which is a big deal. Notice as I move from a preset to another, it's changing, and it's making my life a lot easier because I can see the big picture. That is a big deal when you're doing a lot of pictures and you're trying to move one by one, and you have so many presets. This makes your life a lot easier. Okay. All right. What else? Let me get back here. I also almost forget to mention this, which is very, very important. This is what I like to think about. The new forms, I would look or think of the new profiles as your LUTs. So you look up tables here, it basically maps a table and all of that colors. So the reason why, if you look at, when I pick up here one of those profiles, let's say we go back to modern, and let's say I click here, notice that they have now a slider. If you don't like too much of that color or whatever has been done, you can add to it or you can take it down. I think this is a game changer, okay? because like I said, if you don't, you can get going with what they offer, what the profile looks like, what the map is giving you. And if I click here, do the same thing, right click, and it gives you that same impression. Okay, so go back, I select this one here, and now, oh, do I like it more? You can go right, or you can go left, and you can play with it as you see fit to your picture, because every picture is different, and you can do the same thing. That was another really cool thing that needed to be done, and that's pretty much it. So good job. I will think of it going forward as your adjustment slider is very important to kind of gauge where you want to be at. Do your fundamental adjustment, that is your shadows, your highlights, your shadows, your whites, etc. And then when you add the creative workflow, the technique, then you can think of it as layers of, or profiles in this case, and play with the adjustment, and that is basically the amount of opacity that is being controlled. So think of it as a map, like I said, and let me know if you have any questions. Again, thank you so much for stopping by, and if you want to subscribe to the channel, please do, because we do have some videos that's beneficial to all of you guys. And thank you so much, and have a good day.